Hey everyone, Sheldon here, and in this video I'm going to be showing you how to measure parts accurately. This is a very useful thing to know. Some parts need to be accurate and some parts don't need to be as accurate. As you can see, this is just a normal ruler, actually a pretty cheap one that you could find for like $1 or something like that. But this side has inches and this side has centimeters. So, this is a pretty good ruler for just measuring things in general. There I go again saying in general. Anyway, this is an engineer scale. As you can see, it says engineer right there. And this is divided into tenths of an inch. So each one of these little tick marks is 1/10 of an inch. This is something you would usually write everything in a decimal form, and with this you write it in a fractional form usually, except for the metric side. That would be in a decimal form also. I will be going into more detail about all of the metric stuff in another video. I will be showing you guys how to convert some of these measurements back and forth, but that will be after I finish the metric version of the blueprints for the paper full-size dual-action hidden blade. So, if you made it this far in the video, now you know that these are going to be metric pretty soon. So anyway, to measure things very accurately, I use dial calipers, and these are very, very helpful because you get a lot more accuracy when you use these. So the one I have right here measures everything in inches, although there are other types that measure in centimeters as well. Dial calipers are about $20, and I believe the digital version is a little bit cheaper than that. But then of course you have to replace the batteries. So I'm going to show you guys how to read these really quick. Alright, so as you can see, there's a huge glare on it, but that's okay. This part right here is for measuring the outside of objects, so, just kind of like this. It's meant for measuring the outside. And this part right here is meant for measuring the inside of objects. And this part right here is meant for measuring depth. There is a lock right here that you just twist, and that will prevent the sliding part from moving. You can use that lock when you're measuring something and you take it off the object that you're measuring, but you don't want this to get bumped or move at all. This little piece right here is what you put your thumb on to move the entire thing like this. So if I move this over a little bit, you can see all of these little tick marks right here. You can see the smaller ones here and then the bigger ones there. And the bigger ones represent the inches. So 1 inch, 2 inches, 3 inches, and so on. So that tick mark is just a little bit taller than the other ones before it and the tick marks after it until you reach the next inch increment. These tick marks right here are all tenths of an inch, which is the exact same thing as the engineer's scale. These are tenths of an inch as well. Of course, only when you're looking at the side that has the 10 right there. So this is the dial right here, and as you can see, it moves very fast because each one of these 1/10 tick marks, this dial does 1 revolution, so it goes around once. So let me line it up right here with the 1 tick mark right there and the 0 right there. So if I want to move this slider piece to the 2, it does 1 revolution all the way around, and now it's on the 2 and it's on the 0 again. So every time you measure something, you always look at this scale right here, this huge long scale right here. Always look at that first, and after that, then you finally start to pay attention to the dial. So I just moved this out to a random dimension here. So as you can see all these tick marks before this surface right here, and of course you can see them after, but you only want to pay attention to the ones that are before this surface, this direction. So always look for the big tick mark first, and you can see there's the 1 tick mark right there, which means 1 inch is at that bigger tick mark right there. So there are 2 visible smaller tick marks after that one. Since we can see the 1 tick mark, which indicates 1 inch, we can write down a 1. So here's a 1 right there. And since it is 2 tick marks and a little bit more than that over, we can write down a 2. But we need to write down decimal point too. So 1 0.2. And then we can look at the dial here. And as you can see, it's a little bit past the 2, but you can't see the 3 yet. So that's when you start to look at the dial. So right here, the dial is all the way down here at the 50. So all we need to do is write down 50. And there you have it, 1.250. Because it is a little bit past the 1 tick mark right there, which is a little bit bigger, and you can see 2 visible tick marks after the 1, so 1.2, and then you can't see the 3, but it's not exactly on the 2, which means you look at the dial and it is 50, so 1.250, just as a review. So let's try to measure something here. This is just a mechanical pencil, and I'm just going to use this part right here, which is meant for measuring the outside of objects or the outside diameter. And let's do this. Always make sure the surface is clean, which I did that before the video, so just put it on the outside, move it around a little bit just to make sure it's in the right spot, and I can see 1, 2, 3 small tick marks on this entire scale right here. Now I don't see the 1 increment, which would let me know that it is 1 inch or above. I can only see 3 of the smaller increments before it. So since I don't see a 1, I put a 0. So I'm just going to write down a 0 and then the decimal point. And I can see 3 visible tick marks, and sometimes it can get a little bit confusing because this surface, it might look like it's on one of the tick marks or a little bit past it, but that's when you have to look at the dial just to make sure. But we always do that anyway, so it should be alright. So I can see 1, 2, 3, like I just said, so I can write down a 3. Since I have the 0 and the point, I can just write down a 3 right there. And then I look at the dial, and I can see the 10 right there, and 1, 2. So since I counted those really tiny tick marks on the dial right there, which indicates thousandths of an inch, there's the 10, so 1, 2. All I have to do is write down 1, 2. So that is the dimension, the outside dimension for this mechanical pencil. 0.312. So what if I measure something a little bit smaller, like this wire I use a lot for the paper hidden blade? Let's just put it on there like that. You can actually see there is no other visible tick mark after this 0 mark right there, which means you only have to look at the dial for a measurement that is below the 1 right there. So all you have to do is count. So you can see the 60, and then you can see the 65, and then you can see the 66. So this is 66 thousandths of an inch, because each one of these tick marks is 1,000th of an inch. And you would write that down like this. So remember, there's no 1 inch increment mark, so you just write a 0. It isn't on a number on this scale right here, so you just write down another 0. Make sure your decimal's there, and now you just use the dial, so 66. I'm sorry, this is kind of hard to hold here. It's like going out and hitting everything and knocking it over. So those are the 3 things we measured here, as you can see. Here's a blueprint here, as you can see, and this kind of ties into the designing techniques video I did, so if you haven't seen that yet, then be sure to check it out. It might help you guys out a little bit. So here it is. So here's a dimension right here, 2.100. So all I have to do is bring it out like this. Remember, you read this first, so go out to the 2 right there and make sure this is on the 0, just to make sure it's exact. So I can see the 2 inches, and it says 100, which, remember, all of these small increments are divided into tenths of an inch, and 1 revolution of this is one of those smaller tick marks. So I just have to look for the small 1 after that, which means this dial should do 1 revolution all the way around, just like that, until it touches the 0 again. So 2.1 just like that. And actually here's the piece right here. So yep, it matches up perfectly. 2.100. Dial calipers are very helpful. I use this tool a lot in all of my builds and stuff like that. I even use it for some of my drawing projects, you know. It helps, whatever helps. So I can go more in depth with the dial calipers and stuff like that. Just let me know in the comment section below. I can show you a little bit more measuring with this and maybe the inside dimensions and also the depth indicator part. So dial calipers are a very good investment. You can use these. That's why I recommend using an engineer scale if you don't have dial calipers, because these tick marks get very small on here. So you can be pretty accurate with that as well. So thanks for watching this video. It's pretty important to have accurate measurements, especially if you're like a machinist or something, but I mean this is just paper crafting, so it doesn't really matter as long as it works. I just measure everything accurately so I don't have any wasted force or anything like that. I want to make sure everything is the most efficient it can be. If you have someone building aircraft parts, you don't really want them to be like, oh, you know, it's only a couple inches off, it doesn't matter, it's fine, you know. Things like that you cannot mess up on. Those need to be accurate. But stuff like this should be fun, so don't get too involved with all the numbers and stuff like that. You can get anything to work as long as you work consistently on that project. So yeah, once again, thank you so much for watching this video. If you have any questions, feel free to ask in the comment section below or in a personal message. And be sure to subscribe if you would like to see all of the latest updates. And I will see you guys in the next video.